Today, we're going to be talking about shifting left with Cypress, a dev and QA collaboration story. So we're going to dive in and talk about what shifting left really means and some common misconceptions around it. Then I'm going to share a real story, which is my own experience building an automation test suite from the ground up using Cypress and how it's been able to mature our entire quality process. So if I talk a little bit fast, I'm really sorry. I got a little overzealous with some of the content. There's a lot to dive into, but that's what recordings are for. So you could always watch it back later. So let's dive into it though. With a little bit about me, just quick introduction. I'm a senior SDET at Madium, and Madium is a tiny startup. We're focused in the supply chain, which really just means we're trying to make the movement of materials optimized. So you can think like recycling, reduce plastic waste, reduce carbon emissions, just make our environment better. So if you're passionate about that outside of work, or you just want to talk about what we can all do to make our lives better long-term, hit me up. I love talking about that. I'm also a Cypress ambassador, no surprise. This is my conference. Huge honor to be back here again. Love talking Cypress, so I'm sure you can find me in the Discord if you ever need help. And then I'm from Denver, Colorado. So I just love meeting people from the community. So if you ever find yourself in my neck of the woods, feel free to say hi. So let's begin with the big question, which is just defining what shifting left is. So when you look at the software development lifecycle, you typically have some form of like planning phase and then product phase and then development phase, testing, deployment, and it kind of all just like loops endlessly like this, right? And you start a feature and then you go through completion and then you start the next feature and then it starts all over again. And traditionally, testing typically lives somewhere in the middle or kind of towards the end of that cycle. Now, when people hear shift left, the common misconception that I see people assuming the most is that it just simply means shifting testing earlier, which is a misconception. And while that's a big part of it, I want to break down some silos and clarify that it's all about shifting quality earlier, not just testing. It's about weaving this kind of quality mindset into every single phase of your software development lifecycle, all the way through design to deployment, not just this testing phase. So you need to think about each phase and how you can bring quality from start to finish. This then means that shifting left becomes quality gets owned by everybody, not just QA, not just testers, but devs, product, even that one intern who decided to push to production on Fridays and took down AWS for a day and a half. It's about everybody owns quality. So then this now means that shifting left is not just about squashing bugs or reducing bugs. You shouldn't shift left just to fix all your bugs that are happening. That shouldn't be the sole focus, which might sound strange, but reduced bugs are just a natural outcome of fixing the process before they originate. If you just focus on the result, you're not going to fix the process. But if you fix the process, well, then those bugs are going to decrease just naturally. So I like to think about being able to break down shifting left into kind of three common themes, which are broken down on this slide, meaning that everything you do to shift left should fall into one of these categories. So first and foremost, fail fast, which just simply means how fast are we catching issues? And you should want to fail. That's a big thing about shifting left, because if you don't know what is wrong, then you don't know how to improve. So if you don't know what isn't working, then you're not going to be able to know how to make it work better. So you just want to catch all sorts of failures. This isn't just bugs or failing tests. This could be product issues, bad code of any test or application, deployment issues, even miscommunication is a team issue, right? And you want to be able to catch those, adjust, and then move quickly. The second theme is collaboration, which is just simply how well are we working together? Are your teams siloed? Are you not talking? How early in your software development lifecycle are you collaborating on new features? As in, are you bringing like an engineering mindset into product ticketing? Are you combining your strengths, or is everything siloed and you're kind of just passing a ticket from one team to the next? And there's all sorts of miscommunication and assumptions that are happening. And then finally, efficiency. So now that we're catching issues, this is just all about how well are we reacting to them? How well are we moving faster? Are you identifying bottlenecks in your process? And not just identifying them, but are you actually willing to adjust to them? This is another big thing. You could say, yeah, we have a problem, but we just don't really want to do anything about it. So this is all to kind of set the mindset of how I'm going to approach my own story. So let's dive into it a little bit and where I began. So when I joined my current startup, Madium, last year, we only had 13 people, and I was the 13th employee. So lucky number 13, obviously the best employee, not to brag or anything. But the point is, we're really itty bitty, right? We're just a tiny startup. And prior to me joining, we only had one QA engineer who lived in Poland. And the rest of my team lives in the States, which is an 8-hour time difference, meaning that if something broke, the team is only going to find out about it tomorrow, like an 8-hour time difference. And then they give feedback, and then the team, 8 hours later fixes, and 8 hours later, and 8 hours later. It's this long cycle of getting quality feedback. Not only this, we didn't really have automation tests, so it was completely manual. And on the development side, while our front end is awesome and super mature, in the initial stages of the application, we kind of took some shortcuts, and we didn't really follow the best practices and rush things a bit initially, as maybe a startup does, to get that initial V1 app. So what ended up happening, though, is that as now the team starts building new features, we would find bugs over here when the new feature was touching code over here. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, where you're like, how did that even break? We didn't even touch that kind of code, or just unpredictable bugs. But they're the worst kind of bugs because they're really hard to catch, especially if you don't have the automation suite. So now we have to do long manual regressions for every single release, which is painful. It's cumbersome. It's boring. Nobody wants to do that. And the worst of all, it's still not catching everything. And all of this is to say that as a startup, this current process just would not scale. And with a startup, you really only have a limited amount of money to succeed, and time equals money. So you really only have a limited amount of time to succeed. So my mission was simple. When I got brought in, my focus was to build automation and build process and bring a quality mindset to everything, not just myself, but to the entire team to own quality so we can collaborate on it together. So the first place I started, unsurprisingly, or maybe surprisingly, but I didn't even write code the first couple weeks I was there, is instead I focused on the mindset. And I might say something that might surprise you, that despite this being a Cypress talk and Cypress conference, the tool that you use doesn't matter at all if your mindset is wrong. If your team doesn't have accountability and buy-in, no framework, no tool is going to save you long term. And it does sound simple, but it really isn't. You would be surprised that a lot of teams say they want quality, but their actions do something different. They cut certain corners. They skip certain processes when push comes to shove to hit a deadline. And what I hope that you'll get out of this talk is that shifting left is about slowing down initially, setting the foundation, setting down the mindset, but not slowing you down long term. It actually speeds you up long term versus slowing you down. So it's about building a culture where you allow people to make mistakes while also trusting them to do their jobs, because we're all adults. It's okay to make mistakes. We're not perfect. And you should also welcome those mistakes. Like I said, you should want to fail fast, because mistakes are simply opportunities to learn and improve. And if you fail fast, you learn fast. And if you learn fast, you improve fast. So when I joined the startup, I just got to meet all my coworkers, understand their roles, their responsibilities, their strengths, how they defined quality, and how we could create a process together, create that collaboration, get their input. Even though it was maybe my specialty, I still wanted everyone's buy-in. That way we could all agree on something before implementing it to reduce friction or even pushback long-term once things started getting implemented. So with that being said, we've set the mindset. Now let's get into maybe some more of the fun stuff, which is the code, the automation part. So how do you build an automation framework from scratch? So for me, it always comes down and starts with a model I like to call the automation maturity framework, which has 4 stages as displayed in the slide. And I spoke about this concept really in depth last year. So if this is of interest to you, you can find that talk online. I wish I could expand as in great detail as I could last year, but I'm still going to go through each phase and reference how Cypress helped me achieve each one. But there is video online if you want expanded information. But the reason that I have this model is because I like to think of an automation framework being the equivalent of like a car or a vehicle, where your test suite is the car and each test is a wheel. So if you just have the wheel or a single test and you roll it down a hill, where is it going to land? Well, it might make it halfway down the hill and it might fall over. So then you take another wheel and you push that down the hill. And this time it goes maybe almost all the way down the hill and it gets 3/4. And you take a third tire and you throw that one down and it hits a rock or a bump or whatever it may be, and it falls a fourth of the way down or something. And ultimately, then what this means is you have wheels scattered all the way across this hill. In comparison, if you hook those up to a framework or a car and you push that thing down the hill, no matter how many times you do that, those wheels are going to stay in place and they're going to have a predictable result by the time they get down the hill, sorry, because they are contained by a framework. This is the same concept when it comes to automation. You can't just build tests without having a strong framework or thinking to the future. Because if you do, you're going to end up with unpredictable results, unreliable tests, and it's going to be impossible to scale because you're going to be putting out more fires than building new tests. So this is what this model is supposed to achieve. It's supposed to give you a roadmap of things to focus on first, to build that car before the wheels, to allow you to succeed long-term. So let's start at the most important phase, the very bottom, which is confidence, and how I use Cypress and kind of focused on that level. So this phase is just simply setting yourself up for success in terms of how you can trust your tests long-term. And again, this sounds really simple, but as we know, and a biggest pain point probably that we all experience is, test flakiness. There's a lot of variables that can impact the test and impact whether or not it passes or it fails. So because of that, I do think there are 3 things that you can start to think about or address up front to minimize that variability you might have long-term. And that's having a plan for test flake, having a plan for your environmental stability, and having a plan for your test data. So with test flake, this is the most important, and a lot of talks also talk about this. Test flake is just going to happen. It's inevitable. There's too many variables that can impact a test, and building a perfect test is just really, really hard to do. So while you want to always focus on improving your tests so they're less flaky, you also have to think about, what are you going to do when it happens? Because you can't avoid test flake, but you can manage how you react and handle it. So because of this, my team adopted this mindset, and we all agreed that simply all tests must pass. This is the mindset that we took in, and once we started hooking tests up to our pipeline and started running things, every single code change would trigger our Cypress tests. And if you had automation tests running, all those tests must pass before you can merge your tests in. And what this does is it reduces the idea of saying like, oh, that one test always fails, just ignore it. Or, oh, that just rerun that test. It's flaky, just keep rerunning, wait another, 10, 15 minutes until it passes, it's fine. No, all tests must pass. We treat every failure, regardless of what it is, if it's a real bug, test flake, bad environment, whatever it may be, with the same severity, same priority, and same urgency, because over time, what this does is it actually builds real trust in your test suite. So when you get a failure, there is a very high chance that it's real value and a real issue. We don't want our tests to just be background noise. We want them to mean something, so we take it seriously. Technically, we leaned into Cypress built-in dynamic weighting, assertion retries, which is, of course, a fundamental concept of Cypress. But if you're not as familiar with it, definitely look it up. We configured CI/CD retries before even building our pipeline, so we were ready to spot test flake. Again, super easy to do with Cypress. For environmental stability, I wanted to be able to run against multiple environments like dev, local. Being able to do that is just super easy out of the box. You can define multiple configurations per environment and point your tests in different directions with a single command. For running tests against different environments as well, I started to realize, like most people, you run into DOM performance issues. So for us, a great pattern is using CY intercept to handle dynamic weighting. So your tests are waiting on real requests, not just arbitrary timers or hard-coded waits. We use CY session for consistent authentication. Again, another invaluable command that you should absolutely be looking into. It bundles all your authentication code, making it reusable against multiple environments. And then finally, for data management, I truly just follow a single pattern, which is programmatic control. I want all of my tests to control all of their data, meaning that they will never be dependent on any environment, seed script, manual intervention, whatever that may be. And this is achieved with CY request. You can actually mimic how your application works, make real API calls, make real data calls, so your tests can actually control their own state. This is a pattern I would highly recommend. And like most things with shifting left, it's going to take an initial investment to set up. But now I can actually write any test against my application in any state I want. And it takes like a minute or less to do, maybe even seconds. And I'm not exaggerating. It is super cool because we've invested all of that effort up front. So we've also started getting into visual testing. So we use CY fixtures, CY intercept to use static data, which is also another thing Cypress has allowed us to do. And we just caught our first visual regression, actually. So that's really exciting for the team because it's brand new. So all of this is to say, know your commands, have a plan for trust long-term before you start like building and scaling your test suite fast. So the second phase is all about now getting value out of this, which is really just how do you integrate with the pipeline. So for us, we use GitHub Actions, super easy with Cypress. There's lots of tutorials online to achieve this. We hooked up 2 workflows. We have a pre-merge, which runs against every code change. And then we have a nightly, which runs kind of against different types of environments, more prod-like with different data, just to kind of catch maybe data edge case things or maybe environment things. But the main focus was on pre-merge. And while our pre-merge workflow runs against every single change, and it might sound like a little overkill, remember one of our big pain points is we had no idea where bugs were popping up. Like we could be making a change here and things were breaking here. So for us, we knew that taking a performance hit in the short term, running everything to catch those edge case bugs was invaluable. We had to do it. It was a strong investment for us until we could really confidently maybe fix some of the application issues you were having. And long term, we might adjust this approach to run subsets of tests under different conditions. But for now, it's working exactly the way we want. We get the value out of it. And then also really invested in result visibility. So we hooked up GitHub, of course, to our results. So we get notified if things pass or fail. And you can, of course, block merges if tests fail if you want. And then we have access to all the common artifacts in the pipeline, like screenshots, video, logs. So they're all available easily, and you don't really have to play like Sherlock Holmes to solve a complicated mystery. You can kind of just obtain exactly what happened right away. Okay, the third phase is now we have things running. This is all just about scaling. How do you write tests faster, debug tests faster, and execute tests faster? So for us, writing tests faster, really just we lean heavily on custom commands. And if you aren't using this unique type of helper, I would highly look into it. It's awesome. Cypress custom commands have saved us so much time, reducing duplicated code use. Writing new tests is a breeze. I don't have to reinvent shared functionality, shared validations, shared actions. Really look into that and building up your custom command suite. We've also started to get into AI, which every single day I'm more and more impressed with and how it can pick up on patterns in your code. And then, of course, Cypress today just announced CY prompt, which I'm excited to play with because I haven't gotten a chance to play with that yet. So always just looking for different tools to make us more efficient because, again, that's part of the themes of shifting left. We want to get faster. For debugging, the Cypress test runner is my best friend. Being able to just kind of reproduce pipeline issues locally, it's a total game changer. For those that have been in the industry long, it didn't used to be like this. Trust me, we are spoiled with the tools we have now. So this is just always the first place that I look for when things break. And then in terms of process, reducing variables. So by that, I mean variables are how much has changed between test runs. If you have a green test run and you push up one piece of code change and you get a failure, well, it is very easy to troubleshoot and maybe guess what exactly caused that issue. Versus if you just have a single nightly test and you go through like 100 changes of new tests, new environment changes, configs, dev code, and you wake up the next morning and you have 10 failures, well, it is much harder, way more time consuming to try to figure out what may have broken what and where. So reduce the variables between test runs, especially once you get that green test suite. And then finally for us, running tests faster, we've used a lot of amazing community plugins that some other people have actually also mentioned in their talks, which is cool to see. So for us, this allows us to like parallelize our tests, speed up how fast our tests are actually executing in terms of like pre-processing. And a big mistake that I see junior or kind of like entry-level engineers with Cypress is they don't look at existing plugins and they don't really know how much power is out there, because chances are if you have run into a problem, somebody else in this community has too. And our community is amazing and awesome that there's probably an available solution for it. So lean on the plugins, do your research first, because you probably don't know how much you can optimize your own test suite. And then finally, of course, reducing DOM interactions. This all comes down to CY request again, being able to set state, reducing how much the UIs or our tests are going through unneeded UI user flows, just to improve our test performance, because of course the API is faster than the UI, especially when you don't need to go through the UI. And then smart mocking. So this just means mocking some intercepts and requests in my application that I don't really need. And for example, for us on our homepage, we fetch a lot of images, a lot of files, and that kind of slows down initial load. And what I've done is I've just mocked those endpoints to return nothing, because my tests don't really care that images exist, or most of them don't care they exist. So I've sped up performance without losing coverage about what I actually care about. So don't do this with everything, of course. You want real data a lot of the times, but mock responsibly, is what I like to say. Okay, long-term feedback. This is the final phase now. This is just now kind of having a retro, gaining insights about how things are working, tracking patterns over time. So for me, this started with on after run, which is a really cool hook that Cypress allows you to collect data after every single test finishes. So what I did is after each of my pre-merge tests run, I get to save off all of my test results, pass or fail, in a JSON artifact. And then I created another workflow every week that runs once a week. It pulls all those artifacts. And then with a script that analyzes all that JSON, it starts to give me smart results and smart feedback. So for example, for us, if we have a test that flakes more than 10 times in a week, it now automatically creates a linear ticket and assigns it to me every Monday morning. So the tests are actually like tattling on themselves, which is really funny. And you can do this with test performance or common errors, just so you always have that visibility and can track these long-term patterns. It's really, really awesome. We've also started using feature flagging with StatSig, and Cypress also integrates really well with that. So I can test both on and off conditions of a feature flag. I'm never missing any coverage long-term. Okay, sorry, that was a lot, but this is where we ended up about a year and a half later. As of this recording, we have about 500 end-to-end tests, 90% coverage. They're running about 15 to 16 minutes. And under 2% test flake. And I am honestly super proud of this, super proud of the team, because we've come a long way with where we started a year and a half ago. And it's all because we started with that mindset. We take our tests seriously. And Cypress has allowed us to do everything we wanted to achieve in terms of improving our process. And then the final piece that I just like to acknowledge is that QA also approves every PR. And when I say approve, I don't mean like you're the gatekeeper. It's more of a collaboration, that final shifting left collaborative step to make sure, like, is everybody good to go with this change? That way nobody is just merging things that are catching people off guard, that aren't really ready to go. We have some form of validation. I know I'm getting short on time, sorry, but here's kind of a summary slide that I just want to, if you're going to take anything away from this, just make sure that quality is a priority for your entire team, not just a department. This has to happen first. I cannot stress this enough. Like, don't actually just say it, do it. All tests must pass, whatever mentality that you have to be, because now my team moves so fast. We trust our tests. We no longer face unpredictable bugs. We trust our releases. Quality feedback is instant. We have solved so many problems we had a year and a half ago. Get your green baseline, whatever you have to do to get there. Just, don't take shortcuts. Get it green and keep it green. Don't just retry, and own your process. Hold yourself accountable. Scale smart. As you've seen with shifting left, it's everything I've talked about is just thinking towards the future. So have some sort of roadmap, have some sort of plan. You don't have to do everything I've talked about, or really anything I've talked about, because your own solution is going to be unique to you. Your team is unique. but you should have a plan in place, and you should at least be thinking about these same things that I thought about, even if the technicals might just look a little different. Measure success. You won't know if you're doing something right if you don't know, how you're measuring your own success. So for me, it always comes back down to those three main themes of shifting left. I'm measuring how fast we're failing, how well we're collaborating, and how efficient we are. Okay, and then finally, I just want to always leave it on a positive note that you should always celebrate your wins, because building a mature automation framework just does not happen overnight or even in a week. For us, it took a year and a half, which is a long time, but as a small startup, a tiny team, we did it, and we celebrated our wins each step of the way, because you don't really know. If you don't take the time to acknowledge, I guess, where you've come, you kind of forget where you are. And this is hard, and we're all kind of in this together. So, all right, thank you so much. That was a lot. Happy testing, and yeah, thank you.
David, you did it again this year. I love the session. Love this insightful look at what a true collaboration across roles in your team can really look like. I know there's a lot people are going to be walking away trying to implement into their team, but I think really probably the biggest question that folks who are getting started on this path is represented by this question from the audience. You talk about shifting mindset. What if you have some team members, you're not starting from scratch, that are maybe resistant to the kind of change that shift left brings? What are some tactics, tips that you might have for this?
Yeah, definitely. Not everybody is going to always be on board, but what people usually listen to is metrics. That makes things a little bit more neutral, less biased, rather than just, take my word for it. So start with what your pain points are. Are you bleeding prod bugs? Are you taking, a month to release when you should be taking a week to release? Those are measurable things that you can say, like, we are doing something that could be improved. Let's talk about now how we can improve it. And then you can start recommending shifting left. And if they're still getting pushback, what I like to do is it all comes down to money, right? Like, you can always have that money conversation. If you're doing things slower, typically that costs the company more money. If you're doing things and fixing lots of bugs, putting out fires, that costs the team money. So if you need to, get the right stakeholders involved and talk about, like, hey, we could really be doing things a lot better. And hopefully it doesn't come to that point, but always start with quantitative metrics, because again, if you don't know where you are, you don't know where you want to be. It's just kind of like waving your hands and saying, like, I want to get better, but how? And start with something you can actually measure your success.